in times of the past. We'll be loose from oppressions at last. How united we ever will stand for the welfare of all in this land. Hail hooray to our island, St. Andrew, Old Providence and Little St. Catherine. Soon your children will gain to each attainment, every merit whichever receive. No more strangers will rule in our home, no injustice to cause us to roam. We have the help of the Almighty above, who shall lead us along in His love. Hail hooray to our island, St. Andrew, Old Providence and Little St. Catherine. Soon your children will gain to each attainment, every merit whichever receive. No more evil on us shall befall. Soon there'll be peace and justice for all. We're together as one in God's might. To gain freedom we'll win every fight. Hail hooray to our island, St. Andrew, Old Providence and Little St. Catherine. Soon your children will gain to each attainment, every merit whichever receive.
You're mute. Morning to our listeners. Today
Good
is
morning, good morning.
morning, Pastor
Blessed
Carlo.
day to everyone of you across our beloved island, and to all who are listening from near and far. This is Pastor Edgardo Martinez here from El Paso, Texas. And today, with humility and gratitude, we inaugurate this new streaming radio program, Voice of the Raizal Nation. And this is a space for truth, unity, and healing. This is your program created for our people, our families, and our future. And we begin today in a time of deep pain. Our island is hurting. Our families are grieving. Many among us are fearful, uncertain, and burdened by the violence that has shaken our community. And yet, we gather here today because we believe that even in the darkest moment, God is present, God is speaking, and God is working among us in San Andres, Providence, and Catalina Islands. This program is not just a broadcast, it is a call to stand together. It is a space where we listen, where we reflect and pray and begin seeking solutions as one Raizal people, one family, one island. So today we open our hearts to God and to one another, trusting that we will not walk this journey alone. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for caring. Thank you for believing that our islands can heal, that peace can rise again, and that hope is stronger than fear. So let us now open this inaugural broadcast in prayer. Shall we pray?
Great.
Eternal Father, creator of heaven and earth, we come before you today as one island family, hurting, grieving, and searching for your peace. Lord, you see the tears of our people. You hear the cries of the mothers. You know the fear that grips our neighborhoods and the heavy burden carried by our youth. And so today, oh God, we turn to you. We ask for your guidance as we open this new streaming radio program. Let this space become a voice of truth, healing, unity, and hope. Give us wisdom to speak with compassion, clarity, and courage. Give us discernment to understand what is happening around us in our islands. Give us strength to face these challenges without losing heart. And so, Heavenly Father, we pray for our people. Protect every home, every child, every family. Stretch your hand over these islands and break every chain of violence, of fear, of revenge, and despair. Let your peace, your true and lasting peace, settle over our streets, our schools, and our communities. Unite us, Lord. Bring our hearts together as one people. Remove every division, every barrier that keeps us from loving and protecting one another. Restore dignity where it has been wounded, restore hope where it has been lost, restore courage where fear has taken root. And as we begin this first program this morning, may your Holy Spirit guide our words and shape our thoughts and open a new chapter of unity and healing for our islands. We place this broadcast and our entire island in your loving hands. In Jesus' mighty and precious name we pray. Amen.
And
You need me to continue, Brother Jairo?
yes, please.
So again, good day, good morning, family of our beloved island of San Andres. As I was saying, today we gather on this new streaming radio program that is being cast out from down at the Christian University, led by the Raizal Authority and RDC, the Raizal Development Center. And today we gather on this new streaming radio program with heavy hearts, as I said, because our island is living through a painful and unsettling moment. Violence has taken lives, shaken families, disrupted the peace that we once enjoyed, and created a sense of fear that none of us can ignore. Shaken families that feel it in our neighborhoods, in our conversations, and in the silence that has begun to settle over our communities. Um, we have always been a people of unity, a community, dignity, and I would say deep cultural strength. But today our island is facing pressures we cannot afford to face alone. We cannot walk this walk by ourselves. We need understanding, we need clarity, and we need to open a responsible, honest, and compassionate conversation about what is truly happening and what we as a community can do together. This program is our humble beginning, as Brother Hira would say. Our intention this morning is not um, what the word to blame. not to divide, and not to deepen fear. I think our purpose is to kind of shine a light on the reality we are living, to listen to wisdom, to understand the forces shaping this violence, and to begin um, identifying concrete community based solutions that honor who we truly are. And so by the end of this program, we hope that you, our listeners, will feel more informed, more connected, and more empowered. We hope to begin planting the seeds of a peace movement that is rooted in truth, in unity, in community, and and definitely in collective responsibility. And we are honored to have with us Dr. Siegfried Castell Britton, who I just had the privilege to met last night, and I hope to get to know him a little better. Um, he has prepared a deep and data grounded reflection to help us understand the social, cultural, and external pressures contributing to the rise in violence on our island. His work, and I'm sure his conversation this morning and his presentation will help us to see the big picture, not just the symptoms we feel, but the systems and pressures that are behind them. So today we open this program with humility, with hope, and with the commitment to work together as one people. So I want us to welcome Dr. Siegfried Castell Britton, um, who will be sharing with us now. My brother.
Good morning to everyone.
Arnie,
Um, First, I want to thank Hyra for the invitation and thank you all, the Raizal leaders and community members who are here today. Also, those who join us online and those who will be watching this conversation later. Thank you all for listening to us. Speaking about violence is never easy. Let's start with the presentation, Hyra, please.
yep, have it.
So, speaking about violence is never easy, especially when it affects our own island, our families, and our daily lives. But the fact that this conversation is happening already says something very important. This is a very broad topic, as we know, and we will need more than one session to discuss what violence is and what pertain and what comes from violence. Violence grows when people remain silent, and I want to have this as a first sentence that I want you to think of. Violence grows when people remain silent. It begins to lose strength when communities speak, when communities listen, and when communities reflect together. That's why this space matters. So today is a very simple way of defining it. We are going to introduce a slide, and then we're going to explain the main idea, and then we're going to invite our other speakers to share their thoughts about it. So each guest will have 1 minute to comment on each ad and give their perspective as well. So we have violence on our island. I want to understand the problem and advance with collective solutions. Let's put the presentation again, Hyra, please.
I'm not hearing.
Hyra,
I
can you
think
hear
the
us?
voice went out, Brother Hyro.
And the presentation as well. Pastor, can you hear me? We got disconnected.
Okay, yeah, I'm not hearing Dr. Siegfried began our conversation uh, on the journey that he was taking us together is that violence never has a single cause. It grows from multiple pressures. And so this morning, what we want to do is to examine why violence has increased and what patterns are emerging. We want to consider population growth and social conditions that stretch our services. He
Pastor,
will
excuse me. So they're
discuss
telling me
unemployment,
on the radio
inequality, and
that they can
economic
hear me.
pressures on our youth, and look at external criminal forces that exploit our island's geography. Name the social and cultural strain, like fear and silence and weakening bonds, and help us understand the impact on families and youth. And hopefully, we have time to present concrete community-led pathways, like having better data, neighborhood vigilance, dialogue, and shared leadership. So, our aim this morning is not only to understand this crisis, but to leave with first steps we can take together toward unity, protection, and peace.
Okay, they can hear me, Pastor. You can't hear
So
me,
you
but
can go ahead, Doctor.
okay,
I
thank you.
think your sound is back.
Okay, all right. So we were saying that this presentation is a community-based look at violence. It is based on data, and because data helps us to see patterns and changes over time. So the idea is that we are going to see if we can have the oh, they said that the light went off at the Christian University. So we want to apologize for the inconveniences. Harry is saying that the light went off at the Christian University. So let me see if I can share my presentation. I think I can. Let me check.
Dr. Castell, you can go ahead because they tell us that they are hearing you.
Okay. I am going
Someone
to
sent a text from outside and they are hearing you perfect. So you can go ahead.
yeah, I'm going to share the presentation and then we go from there.
I'm not hearing you, but the community is hearing you.
Okay.
Hello.
When we talk about violence, we're not talking about bad people or bad communities. So we want to have this clear. In criminology and forensic
Is this?
psychology, violence is
But then tell me, then
understood as a
they
warning
hear
sign.
Dr. Castello, no? Yeah, Federico just text me. Federico just text me, and then they hear him, so him can go ahead. Make him go ahead. I can't hear him, but him. No. I see him. I the seen, but another here.
We are hearing you, Pastor. Okay. So while the presentation is uploading, I was saying that when we talk about violence, we're not talking about bad people or bad communities. So it's the okay, so we apologize for these inconveniences. They're having some technical issues there at the Christian University. And let's see if we can share the slides.
Well, Pastor, this is correct. Only one or two way outside in the diaspora right now with that correct right now, no?
Okay, so let's continue. We were saying that violence is not talking about bad people or bad community. So in criminology and forensic psychology, violence is understood as a warning sign. We need to speak first about what violence is before we come to a solution, right? So it shows that something in the social system is under pressure and no longer working well. So violence is not identity, and we need to have this clear that violence is not identity and it's not a culture either. It's a reaction to stress, overcrowding, and imbalance. So understanding violence this way helps us to move away from blame and toward responsibility and solution. So the goal of this conversation is to help us understand these warning signs together and to think about solutions that are realistic, respectful, and that led from within the Raizal community. So this conversation is not about fear, it's about clarity. And clarity is the first step toward protection. So I want to repeat this sentence. Clarity is the first step toward protection. So I want you to think of this briefly. How do you understand violence on the island? What do you think is signaling that you can say we have violence on the island? There is something that you can think of that telling you that violence is everywhere, right? So I want you to think of that. You that are listening, you can think of what is happening right now in our islands. You can think of killings, you can think of gun shooting, or you can think of robberies, you can think of whatever you can think of. But what about violence in your home? Can you think of violence in your home as well? Can you think of intra-violence in your home before thinking of violence in your community? Violence starts with yourself. Violence starts you being aggressive to somebody, especially maybe your family, and then it reflects also in the society. So let's think of that first. Again, we want to apologize for the inconveniences. And I don't know if you all can see here my presentation is not showing. They're having difficulties there in the Christian University, and we apologize for that. So in the agenda of this talk, we have violence does not appear suddenly. That's the first thing we want to talk about. Violence does not appear suddenly. So research shows it usually grows slowly when social, economic, and emotional pressures build up over the time. So understand this helps us move away from blame and toward responsibility. That's the first thing we want to think of. That suddenly we can't say that violence started on the island just one night to the other, right? It appears suddenly. That's the first thing. The second thing on the agenda is we want to look at what the data is showing us and also what it cannot show. Statistics help us to identify trends, and really they can't really explain fear, and they can't explain anger and frustration or emotional exhaustion that maybe you're having or someone is having in the community. But this is why data must be read with a human lens, right? It must be read with a human lens. So that is very important. Data is important. Then we want to look about violence and how it affects families, how it affects youth, and how it affects our community life. So violence does not say it comes from nowhere, yeah, but it does not stay in the street as well. It enters your home, it enters your school, it enters your relationship. So it enters every single where. And finally, we want to briefly touch on responses, recognizing what exists and also where limits and gaps remaining. And then we would like to discuss where collective solutions can realistically begin. We want to think of things that we can do together to avoid or to stop or to prevent what is happening, right? So not impose solutions, but steps that grow from within the Raizal community. One important note that I would like to say is that violence is not a topic that can be fully covered in 1 hour. So today we want to open this conversation, and if time does not allow us to cover everything, we propose a second or even third dialogue to go deeper together. So this is a very broad topic, and we want to have this in mind. Unfortunately, we can't show the presentation. It's not showing up. Let me check. So let's move on with the second part of this of the slides. It's not showing up. I don't know. Here, edit, remove. No, I don't. It's not showing up. Maybe if I put it here somewhere. No. Okay, it's not showing. So, all right. So let's go with the second part of the conversation. San Andres territory and social conditions. Let's speak first about population. In this presentation or in this slide, I had what the DANE is saying, the DANE, the DANE. So according to the official data from DANE, San Andres has about 75,000 people. Well, 75,000 registered residents, right? This number guides planning for schools, it guides hospitals, it guides security, it guides housing, it guides social programs. So when data is okay, the presentation is coming up here now. Excellent. So when we have this data from DANE or any data from DANE, this is telling us that what they normally look at for the planning, right? For planning for schools, for security, for housing, for social programs, and for everything. However, this figure includes only formally registered residents. Harry, if you're back, we're having an echo in the background.
Okay, let me see.
We're having an echo behind.
Okay.
Okay. So what this figure includes only formally registered residents, as I said, but it does not always reflect people living informally on the islands temporarily or without updated records. This means daily life on the islands may involve many more people than official planning assumes. This is not a secret. Always, they're going to tell us an amount of people living on islands, but really the numbers are more than 100,000, right? In criminal justice research, this is called population underestimation. I want you to remember this term. Population underestimation. When systems are designed for fewer people than those actually living in a territory, service become overloaded. So overcrowding, long waits, frustration, and competition for resources increase, right? When you have population underestimation. This pressure does not automatically create violence, but it creates conditions where conflict becomes more likely. So I want to tell us a little bit about some researches that they did in Brazil, in Italy, in certain part of Italy, and small island communities. These research shows that the same pattern exists with population underestimation. When health, education, housing, security systems are saturated, daily stress increase, and aggressive behavior becomes more common. So violence rises not because people change. Yeah, we can't say that really people change, but because systems fail to respond. Right? So let's go to this concept. I don't know if Pastor Edgardo can hear me now. No, Pastor Edgardo still can't hear me. So let's go to the following slide, Brother Hiram. Okay, historical perspective on violence and crime. We can see here in this slide that violence and crime trends on San Andres Island gradually increased reported violent crime over recent years. Homicide rates fluctuating above national expectations for island territories. Shift from isolated incidents to recurring patterns. Violence linked to social pressure, not community identity. So before we speak a little about this, I want to maybe put you to think something. What experiences related to population pressure or economic stress have you noticed? What experiences related to population pressure and economic stress have you noticed? I want you to think of that. Let's speak first about the economic activity distribution. So let's go back one slide before we speak about the historical perspective on violence and crime. Go back one slide. So in this part here, I want us to speak about the fragile ecosystem and social dynamics that we have before we go to the following slide. San Andres depends mainly on tourism, right? So it depends mainly on tourism, fishing. We have the economic activity distribution. So the bars represent shares for tourism, fishing, and commerce. These are the three main activities. When tourism slows or fishing becomes harder, what happens? Many families are affected at the same time, correct? Because the island is geographically isolated, alternatives are limited, and this is not a secret. Research on island economies shows that when opportunity is narrow and resources are scarce, social vulnerability increases. So violence in this context is not a personal failure. We have to have this clear. It is a response to a long-term structural limits. So what pressure in economic stress, or what population pressure was the question, or economic stress have you noticed on the island? If you go back a little bit on what happened recently what happened in, I think was in 2023, when the planes, the cheap flights suspended on islands, what happened? Remember? What happened is that economy went down. Tourists was not coming in, and many people were struggling. This was just right after the pandemic. So the whole system got affected. Tourism got affected, fishing got affected, and commerce got affected as well, right? That happened recently after the pandemic. So let's think of that. If we depend only on three main sources, which is tourism, fishing, and small commerce, this makes the island fragile as well. The economic base of the island is fragile. Because when everything slows down, when one slows down, everything will slow down, right? Fishing becomes harder, families are affected at the same time, the commerce is affected and everything. So have that in mind. So while we are speaking about this, we need to speak first of the problem before we get to the solutions. You might know all of this already, but before you get to a solution, you have to speak about the problem. So that's what we are doing. Let's go to the following slide now. When we look at data over time, what we see is not sudden chaos, but a gradual increase in reported violent crime. Every year it goes up. 25 deaths, 45, it going up, right? More and more. Homicide rates have fluctuated at levels higher than what would normally be expected for an island of the size that we have, right? It's a small island, and is overpopulated, that we know, and we know that. But what is important to understand is that violence has shifted from isolated events to recurring patterns. And this is, in criminology, a warning sign. When violence becomes recurring, it usually reflects structural stress. And I want you to remember this term, not moral decline. We can't say people getting worse, people getting bad. No, it's a structural stress that is happening. So this point is very important because it helps us avoid misunderstanding what is really happening. The data does not show an island that suddenly became violent. It shows a slow change over time, where incidents began to happen more often and with more regularity. So we remember in the past that we had one sudden death, and you will speak about it for days, weeks, even months. Then you have two deaths, and it happened the same, 3, 4, and it goes up. Today, something is happening in the environment. Yeah, in the past, violence acts tends to be isolated. We have that clear, and they were shocking but not frequent. Over the time, however, the data shows repetition. So when violence becomes recurring, it tells us that something deeper is happening within the social environment. Again, for an island this size, homicide levels above what is normally expected are warning sign. Not a sign of moral failure, and not a sign that the community has changed its values, right? It's a sign that pressure has been building and that social systems are struggling to absorb that pressure. So research and criminology and social psychology consistently shows that when violence becomes patterned rather than exceptional, this cause is usually structural. So it relates to overcrowding, it relates to inequality, it relates to stress, it relates to fear, it relates to a lack of effective outlets for conflict, and not culture nor identity. We have that clear. So our culture is not violence, our identity is not violence, right? So this is why it's essential to say this clearly. So violence reflects social pressure, not who the people of San Andres and Providence and Catalina are. So this is very clear to have in mind. Understanding this protects dignity, and it allows us to focus on solutions instead of blame. So we're not blaming Colombian government, we're not blaming the Ghanaian population, we're not blaming the police, we're not blaming the people, we're not blaming, that this is what we have to have clear. This is not a blame, but is speaking about the problem to be able to come to the solution. We have to have that clear. Let's go on to the following slide, and then here we will make a pause, and I will invite the speakers to participate. Socio-economic pressure. So in this part here, I want us to think of youth unemployment, economic dependence, income inequality, and informal work. One of the strongest source of pressure on the island is economic. That is clear. Many young people face limited opportunities, unstable jobs, uncertainty about their future. They know what's going to take place. This is constant uncertainty that is happening, and it creates frustration and emotional strain. Income inequality and dependence on only few economic activities, as we mentioned before, increase this pressure. So when an economy relies mainly on tourism or small commerce, any disruption affects many families at the same time. A bad season, an economic crisis, a policy change can suddenly remove income from entire neighborhoods. So this will leave people with very little room to adapt or recover. I was mentioning the flight suspension of low-cost airlines in 2023, right after the pandemic. So flights to the islands dropped sharply, if you can remember. According to reports by Semana, published in Semana and other magazines, daily flights were reduced by more than half. And because most local income depends on tourism, many businesses lost clients almost overnight. Taxi drivers, hotel workers, beach vendors, and small shop owners saw their income fall suddenly, and many families struggled to cover basic needs. Informal works adds another layers of stress on our island. So when we speak about informal work, many people live day to day. That's not a secret, right? Focus on survival rather than long-term planning. In these conditions, it becomes harder to manage emotions. It becomes harder to think calmly, and it becomes harder to respond peacefully to conflict. So stress builds up not only financially, but also emotionally and in relationships. So let's have this also in mind. What this slide is showing us is a type of daily pressure that does not allows that not, does not always appear clearly in statistics. Uh, Many young people grow up feeling that no matter how hard they try, opportunities are limited. Jobs feel temporary, insecure, or informal, and the future as well feels uncertain. So we are speaking about what we know to be able to come to solutions. Research in social psychology and forensic psychology, also in criminology, is clear on this point. Chronic economic stress, um, it happens in many cities around the country, and not just in Colombia, but in worldwide. I did some research in in um in in criminal justice and restorative justice program that I conducted in Medellin and Cali, and in all these places in unprivileged neighborhoods, and so you can see that opportunities are limited, especially for young people, right? But this chronic stress that you see in many places does not create violence by itself. It weakens patience, it increases impulsive reactions, and it reduces trust between people as well. So many people are not just trusting in one another. Before, in back days, you could go downtown and you could tell your neighbor, "Oh, I'm going downtown." You leave your house open. Neighbor will go in and take water if they want. You could leave your house, your windows open to catch the fresh air. Today, you can't leave your window open, right? So that is something that is happening, and we know about it. The trust in people as well is failure, or reducing. All of this is reducing the trust between our people. In this context, small conflicts are more likely to escalate, especially among young people who feel excluded, and excluded from what? From stable and meaningful paths. So understanding what we are saying help us to see violence not as a lack of values or character, but as a response to prolonged economic pressure that affects emotional balance and social cohesion within the community. So I would like to see if you have any comments until here. I would like to invite our other speakers to participate on this part so far. Go ahead, please.
Yes. What we notice here, you are emphasizing much on the economical pressures or tension, right? That's what we notice here. Youth unemployment, in community. Yes, we believe in part they have a connection. We always think that they have a connection logically with the density of population, no? That make all this the access to work and the availability of much work very difficult in a small territory. So we coincide in this much.
Very good. Thank you, Jairo. Pastor Edgardo, you can tell him. Yes, Pastor.
Um, yes, are you all hearing me? Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Um, when numbers don't match reality, prevention efforts are always behind. That gap can turn into risk on the ground. Is there any partnerships that we need to correct the data and the planning?
That's a very good question.
And also, Doctor, you describe a shift in the nature of incidents. What changed in the last few years? Like, are there specific neighborhoods or contexts where recurrence is most visible, or warning signs?
Very good question as well, Pastor. So we are going to continue with the following part, and what you are saying will be covered during this part. External criminal pressure on the island. So neighborhoods in particular is being affected, and we are speaking in the entire island of San Andres. It's not just one particular neighborhood where specific population is there, right? I'm having a feedback, Cairo. I'm hearing my voice repeating.
Possibly. Okay. Let's see. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the external criminal pressure on the island. We know that the strategic location within the Caribbean transit routes, we know the presence of external criminal networks, violence linked to territorial control, not local culture, and increased availability of weapons and illicit economies. What these points describe is the external dimension of violence on the island. We know that our island is located in a strategic area of the Caribbean. This position makes the island attractive not only for tourism and commerce, but also for criminal activities, criminal networks that operate across borders. Name them, you know their names. So these networks do not emerge from the community. They come from outside, bringing interests that have nothing to do with Raizal values, nothing to do with traditions, nothing to do with our ways of life. Their goal is control of routes, territory, and illicit markets. I'm still hearing a feedback, Hyro. When violence is linked to territorial control, it changes its nature. It becomes more organized, more intimidating, and often more lethal. So the presence of weapons and illegal economies increase fear and disrupts everyday life, even for people who are not directly involved. Hyro, sorry, I'm still hearing a feedback. This type of violence is not a cultural expression as we mention it over and over. So we have to have this clear. It is not rooted in the identity of our island. It is not nothing that has to do with our identity. It is an external pressure that takes advantages of social saturation, economic stress, and institutional limits. And we have research as well on organized crime that shows that these networks grow where systems are already under strain. It happened in the coast of Colombia. It happened in Medellin. It happened in Cali, etc. In my recent book, Dangerous Minds, I mentioned interviews with ex-offenders or ex-prisoners. We call them ex-offenders in criminal justice. With ex-sicarios, ex-people that were in X or Y groups, and the way how they mention how these systems operate, right? How these networks operate. They exploit overcrowding, unemployment, and weak protection mechanisms. Understanding this helps us respond with intelligence. And also it helps us to coordinate rather than fear or blame. This is something very important, right? We need to understand where it's coming from, how it operates, and what we can do to give a solution to it. Let's go to social and cultural strain. The following slide. This is something as well that we have clear, that in this slide we are describing.
I just had a quick question, Doctor.
Sure, go ahead, please. Hello, yeah, go ahead, please. Pastor, can you hear me?
Yes. So, what are the most common misconceptions about this rise in violence?
The biggest misconception, or the most common misconception about violence, is thinking that it's coming from our identity, our roots, our culture. And one of the biggest one as well is to think that it's coming from bad people, from the increase of, that people is becoming bad, quote unquote. Okay. I'm hearing a feedback again, Hiram. So is that clear, Pastia?
Dr. Shadford, many residents feel the pain but can't see the bigger picture. Yeah, many residents, they feel the pain but they can't see the bigger picture. Um, what would you say to listeners who feel nothing can change? Where have you seen change begin elsewhere?
Sure, that is a very good question, and that's why we have to speak about the problem before we come to the solution. So, first, we are describing what is violence, and we are touching topics that people really don't want to speak about. We mentioned that silence is one of the biggest problem we're having. People really don't want to speak about what is happening because of fear. So, the first step is to speak about what is happening, to acknowledge that the problem is there, and then we will come to the solution, right? And we'll get to the solution with some proposal that we have. So let's first discuss what is happening, and then we will get to that part of the solution, okay? All right. So in the social and cultural strain, we know that we're having some issues, yeah? And we know that is impacting the weakening of traditional and community bonds, especially. In this part, we want to have clear that the traditional bonds between people do not disappear suddenly. They slowly weaken families, neighborhoods, and leaders that are overwhelmed by stress, overcrowding, and constant uncertainty. So when pressure becomes part of everyday life that you might be having, maybe you're afraid to go out, behavior also begins to change, right? As I said, you're afraid to go out. You don't want to speak about certain things. You don't want to go certain places where you used to go. You don't even trust maybe your neighbor anymore. Aggression can slowly become common in daily interactions, not because people accept violence, not because patience and emotional energy are worn down. Small conflicts become bigger more easily when people are already exhausted, right? So we want to speak about your situation, our situation, before we get to the solutions. Fear and silence often follow. Many incidents are not reported, not because people do not care, but because people, they feel unprotected, feel tired, or unsure that speaking up will make a difference. Silence becomes a way of coping, even though it allows violence to continue. So many people, I interviewed, for example, many girls that were abused in Medellin. And for years, they had this pain, with them because no one believed in them, not even their family. Violence inside the home and control over partners also increase in these conditions. Because we speak about violence in our community and we think that violence is just a gun shooting or a killing or a robbery. What about violence in your home? Yeah, research shows that when social and economic pressure rises and when many things going on in your family, you lose control, right? Especially in your household. And this is not about culture, as I said before. It is about stress. It is about unequal power. It is about lack of support. It is about something that is happening that is affecting your daily life. And it is allowing you to affect your relationship with your children, with your partner, yeah, because it starts at home. Finally, limited access to mental health and emotional support leaves people without ways to process anger, fear, and trauma. There are many trauma out there, right? And when emotions are not processed, they are often acted out. This is how ongoing pressure turns into violence between people. So we have to have this and understand this. We need to understand it to have it clear that violence is not only a security problem. Violence is not just I am afraid because a gun might shoot me, a stray bullet. I'm afraid because it might steal me or it might rob me. I'm afraid because they're killing. It is also an emotional and relational problem shaped by pressure that affects how people treat one another every day. How are you treating your children? How are you treating your parents? How are you treating your neighbor? So it starts from myself. It's not just, I am not shooting somebody, so I'm not violent. I am not killing somebody, so I'm not violent. I mean, violent impacting everybody. And this is the following slide that we want to speak about. Let's go to the following slide. Impact on families and youth. This slide explains how violence moves through families over time. In forensic psychology, we understand that violence really begins with extreme acts. And I want to have this clear as well. Many people believe, oh, he's violent, and they brand him as a violent person because he killed, or because he raped, or because he robbed, or because he did something. You have to start much earlier than that, with emotional insecurity inside the home. When family lives under constant pressure, fear, and uncertainty, the sense of safety that a home should provide slowly begins to break down. And I have documented this in my book, Dangerous Minds, with people from prisons in the United States, serial killers that are interviewed in the United States in high-risk prisons in Medellin, in Bogota, and in Cali, and in ex-offenders that I interviewed in San Andres and Providence Island for my dissertation for my doctorate program. These children and adolescents are especially vulnerable in these conditions. Even when violence is not directed at them, exposure to conflict, tension, and fear affects their emotional development. They learn from what they see, right? But also from what it is not said. Silence, unresolved conflict, emotional distance all shape how young people understand relationship, authority, and safety. And this emotional stress increases. Education is often one of the first areas is affected. We see children and teenagers in our schools, they don't want to study, or the lack of interest. Concentration becomes harder, motivation drops, and school engagement weakens as well. So from a psychological perspective, this reflects cognitive overload and emotional dysregulation, not a lack of ability or interest. For many young people on our island, school begins to feel disconnected from their lived reality. Over time, these pressures can lead to increased risk behaviors. In forensic and development psychology, these behaviors are understood as coping mechanisms. They don't have these coping mechanisms, and it's not rebellion or bad character. So we brand teenagers, we brand children that he is hyperactive, he has ADHD, he has this, he's that, he's this, right? And there are ways of managing fear. There are ways of managing fear and anger and frustration or hopelessness when emotional support systems feel weak or absent. What are we doing in our schools with our children and our teenagers is something that we have to ask ourselves. If this cycle is not interrupted, the effects do not stop with one generation. So patterns of emotional insecurity, conflict, and violence can repeat across families and across time. And this precisely is what we refer to as long-term intergenerational effects. And I'll repeat that. Long-term intergenerational effects, or the intergenerational transmission of violence. We are passing it from generation to generation. Our grandparent maybe was violent. I'm saying in the home. I'm not talking about killing. I'm talking in the home. Scolding and beating and punishing out in the sun. Go and kneel down in the sun. I'm not saying that is something wrong. Don't misunderstand my words. Yeah? Where unresolved stress and trauma are carried forward into adulthood and future family relationships, well, you have to check and see what is passing from generation to generation, right? And I'm not saying our generation is violent. Have this clear. But understanding this process is essential because it shows that preventing violence is not only about stopping crime, We are all thinking we have to stop the crime on the island. Of course, we have to stop the crime on the island, but it is about protecting families. It is about supporting parents. It is about strengthening schools and helping young people develop emotional stability, regulation skills, and hope for the future. If you are living in an environment of violence, you can't just stop violence from one day to the other. You have to use a lot of what? Mechanism around the people. So I want to invite our guests. I would like to invite you to reflect on this slide. From your experience, how do you see violence affecting families or young people in the community? Your time to speak. Even if it's not a visible way. Any comments you would like to give? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, yeah, we are aware of that also, Dr. Siegfried, with the intergenerational effect of violence coming from far, far behind. Even from slavery time, those type of violence that our ancestors suffered on the African root, for sure, have a transmission to the other generation coming down. I personally believe that it was cutting down, because with new laws that are in the country that protect the children them now, you know, this office that we call Bienestar Familiar. We talk at least the physical violence might be decreased, but as well, it's not only the physical one, right? Is that the attitude that they may have, the verbal violence, another one at home that might be continued transmitted, and that come from pressures that parents get from outside in their difficulties, economically, etc.
Very good, Hira. Pastor or anyone else that is connected, you'd like to participate? Brother Enrique, Pastor.
One of the way that the violence
We are not hearing you. We're not hearing you. You need to mute your microphone, Hira, while he speaks. Open only one microphone.
okay, when I open the mic, my mic it make a feedback.
We want to give our apologies to the community for our technical issues. This is the first, our first presentation, and we will be having technical issues until we sort them out. So for you to have that in mind. Pastor Ricardo, go ahead, please. Edgardo, sorry. Pastor Edgardo, can't hear you. Okay, so we are having some difficulties again with the technical part. So let's move on to the following slide. Ira, please. We arrive now to the most important part, or the central argument of this presentation. What you probably wanted to hear long ago, right?
Hey, Dr. Siegfried.
Yes, sorry, go ahead. I can hear you now. Go ahead, Pastia.
Hey, Dr. Castell, I think you mentioned earlier that violence grows in silence. You know that trustworthy local messengers are essential. What can churches and community groups do this week, for example, to reopen communication and start bridging that gap of silence?
Excellent question, Pastor. And that is one of the proposals that we are going to give. We have 4 different proposals, and one that you were commenting yesterday is an excellent way of doing it. The idea is for us to open a WhatsApp group or open different channels of communication where people can participate. People can call, people can write, people can speak about what is going on, how they feel. They can participate in what they think is a solution for this situation. So we are going to give those solutions at the end, Pastor, about 3 different proposals, plus including the channel of communication that we can give. We can arrange many different things on the island. I would like to say that one of the biggest power that we have as human beings is prayer. Prayer is one of the biggest tool that we have as human beings. Yeah. So we can't just stop chain of prayers between our different churches. We have a separation always of churches: Catholic, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, Christian Mission, this. We need to join all the churches together and pray. Make walls of prayer for our community and allow the people to speak as well. Bring them into a chain of communication, a channel of communication where they can speak. But let's speak about that after we speak about the main problem of the situation, which is population pressure and social saturation. Thank you all for your participation. So this is the central argument of this entire presentation. When we look at crime and violence on the island, overpopulation is not just one factor among many. It's the main structural pressure that connects and amplifies all the others. We spoke about many problems and we didn't even mention some, but the main structural situation or the main structural pressure that we are having, is overpopulation. San Andres was designed both socially and institutionally for far fewer people. Housing, schools, health services, policing, transportation, and even informal community regulation were built around smaller population. When the number of people living on the island exceeds that capacity, of course, pressure becomes constant and unavoidable, right? We have research in criminology, research in urban psychology, research in environmental psychology, which are very clear on this issue. When population density exceeds the capacity of social systems, crime and violence, of course, will increase. I have some articles published about that, by the way. Even in communities with strong cultural values and social bonds, this pattern has been documented in large cities, refugee settlements, informal urban areas, and even on island territories around the world. We have studies that show that overcrowding increased stress, overcrowding increased irritability, overcrowding increased emotional exhaustion. It reduces patience and increases conflict over space, over resources, over opportunity. Yeah? The guerra del centavo, the guerra de la droga, the guerra de this, the guerra de that. A lot of different people coming in to try and rule territory. In these conditions, small disagreements escalate more easily and violence becomes more frequent. Not because people change, we have to have that clear. Not because islanders or Raizals become violent, no. But because the environment becomes overwhelming. Importantly, research also shows that this type of violence is a situational thing and not a cultural thing. Yeah, it emerges when too many people depend on systems that can no longer respond effectively. So schools become overcrowded. Health services are overwhelmed. Policing becomes reactive instead of preventive. And informal community regulation also weakens. So in this sense, violence becomes a symptom of social saturation. It is a system signaling that is overloaded, right? So this does not remove personal responsibility, but it helps explain why violence can rise even in communities that value peace and coexistence. That is why any serious conversation about crime and violence on the island must address overpopulation honestly. For years, we have been speaking about we are overpopulated. We are overpopulated. But what are we doing about it? Without confronting population pressure, other interventions will remain limited, temporary, or reactive. So this is not about exclusion. So this is about sustainability, about protection, and about fairness. A territory cannot remain safe when it is asked to carry more people than it can humanly support. I live in the Cayman Islands, for example. We have 75,000 people. 75,000 people, and they think it is too much. and Cayman is a lot bigger than San Andres Island, right? So we are bigger, and we have 75,000 people. San Andres is a lot smaller, and we have over 100,000 people or more, because the Dani is saying something, and that is what we come to in the following slide. In the following slide, we need to rush because the time is running. Why accurate population data matters. In this part, I would like to explain that many well-intentioned efforts fail. Even when people are working hard, right? When planning is based on underestimated population, everything that follows is affected, as I said before. Budget is affected, services affected, prevention strategies are affected. So health system as well, we know the health system we have is overcrowded. Schools struggle to serve too many students. You should have maximum 15 students per class, pedagogically speaking. How many you have? 25, 30, 35, I don't know how many. Security becomes reactive instead of preventive. So this is not because institutions do not care or because they are trying to manage, but they can't, right? The level of demand they were never designed to handle. So research in public policy and criminology shows that crime prevention fails most often when population data is inaccurate. So the data has to be accurate for it to be effective. We have studies from centers like in Latin America, in Africa, in Ireland, in the Caribbean, where consistently they show that when governments plan for fewer people than those actually living in a territory, violence increase and trust in institutions as well decline. So prevention strategies are especially affected, and we need to think of that. So programs that work in stable populations lose effectiveness when population density rise beyond capacity. Outreach becomes superficial, and response times increase, and early intervention disappears. So this creates a misalignment between live reality and public policy. We have to have this in mind, that communities experience stress, as we said before, insecurity, competition for resources, and while policies continue to assume a smaller or more manageable population, you will never have the solution, because we are always making data on 75,000 people, what Danny is saying, right? That is why reliable data is not a technical issue. It is a foundation of safety, fairness, and prevention. So without accurate data, no strategy, no matter how well designed, can truly work. So this is a point where understanding must turn into action. And I would like to mention some possible solutions. Let's go to the following slide, and then we round up with what our other guests will talk about. Community-based population census. I would like to propose this and what you think about it. This slide presents one of the most important practical solutions discussed today. A community-based population census is not about control, not about exclusion or surveillance. It is about knowing the reality of who lives on the island, so the island can be protected properly. So the emphasis on a community-led, cultural, respectful process is essential. This means that the census should involve Raizal leaders, community organizations, churches, local institutions. And so when people trust the process, they participate honestly. Can you really trust what, and I'm not blaming the Dane, but can you really trust what they're saying, that we have 75,000 people on the island? Without trust, data is incomplete and ineffective. So collaboration with institutions is important, but leadership must come from the community, right? The goal is not to replace official systems. We have to have this clear, but to complement them with an accurate locally grounded information. Identifying the actual resident population on islands. We said this amount of Raizals, this amount of residents, this amount of foreigners, whatever. Yeah. Will allow services to be planned realistically. Health, education, security, and prevention programs can only work when they are designed for a number of people who truly live there. I would like to mention here that research in public policy consistently shows that territories that correct population underestimation, because that is a population underestimation, reduce crime more effectively than those that focus only on enforcement. You can't put police, army, whatever, to enforce security. You have to plan with the real estimated population, because when you have underestimation of population, it will reduce crime more effectively, and you have research about that. When planning matches reality, pressure decreases and prevention becomes possible. So in this sense, a community-based census is not just data collection. It is a foundation for long-term safety, fairness, and social balance on the island. That is the first proposal. I would like to say about the second proposal, and then you all can comment on them. The second proposal is the following slide, please. Is a neighborhood vigilance and collective care. What this slide is proposing is not policing. It is not surveillance in the traditional sense. It is about restoring community presence and mutual care in everyday life. So neighborhood vigilance begins with trust. It means neighbors know one another. Raizals know who live here, who live there. Pay attention to changes and care enough to intervene early before conflict turns into violence. This kind of vigilance exists long before formal security systems, right? And it happens here in Cayman. It happens in many islands where where people put cameras and people are watching one another. It is rooted in relationships and not authority. Shared responsibility means that safety is not left only to institutions. So families, neighbors, shop owners, elders, and community leaders all play a role in noticing when something feels wrong in the community. Early identification of conflict allows for conversation, mediation, support, right? Before something escalates. So nonviolent reporting and support pathways are essential. And this is the second proposal. In this sense, neighborhood vigilance is not about watching people. So it's about watching over one another. And we have community dialogues, which is the following slide. Community dialogues and early prevention. In this slide, this is one of the most powerful prevention tools any community has, the ability to talk and to listen before problems turn into violence. So regular community listening spaces create opportunities for people to speak about what they are experiencing, the fears they're having, the frustrations, what Pastor was saying about opening channels for them to communicate, telling about their concerns without judgment. When people feel heard, tension begins to what? To decrease. Silence, not conflict, is often what allows violence to grow. So violence grows when you have silence. Safe dialogue between residents and leaders is especially important. Leaders cannot respond to problems they do not hear about, and residents cannot trust leaders they never speak with. So dialogue builds trust and restores connection. Early identification of social tensions allows community to act before situations explode. So most violent incidents are preceded by warning signs and unresolved disputes and rumors and emotional distress, all of this. So when the signs are recognized early, intervention can be supportive rather than punitive. Here in the Cayman Islands, for example, you have the MPs, the Member of Parliaments, and they go around and they visit the communities, and you have the leaders in the neighborhoods, and you have the famosas Junta de Acción Comunal in San Andres. I don't know if they're working. That you have the community leaders that go and talk to their neighbors, and you have cameras that people put on their houses and watch one another house and watch one another neighborhoods, one another shops and neighbors. The neighborhood need to act, all the neighborhood together. And you need to have spaces where people can come out and speak of what is happening. That is very important. So until here, we have some different solutions. We have the way, number one, the census, publish like a census in the community. We have surveillance or watching one another, and we have community dialogue and early prevention. These are just three of the possible solutions that we can start giving. And with the community, we'd like to invite people to join and tell us what you think about it. So you have the word now. Go ahead. We have Dr. Ralph with us. Welcome.
Yes, we welcome Dr. Ralph.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good day. I've been listening for a while and to the very interesting topic and very needed space to really explore and diagnose our situation and look for solutions. I have a question for Dr. Castell. Um, how is cultural clash saying it in other words, loss of self-image because of imposed cultural values that are different from your home's values. An example, children of Raizal parents who might be Protestants, whose parents might not speak English, and who initially see their parents as their role models, go to school where the teacher does not speak English, listens to another type of music, and is of a different religion who they try to impose on him. Does that open avenues for violence, for loss of self image and violence?
Of course, Dr. Ralph, that is a very good question. And I speak precisely in an article I published recently about identity restoration theory. Identity restoration is very important when it comes to avoiding violence in a community that is little by little being observed by other culture. We have loss of identity, and this need to be established in homes, schools, and precisely the dialogues that we can establish among the community. That is one of the principal part of the Raizal community. The Raizal leaders need to start restoring identity in our community, right? Restoring the language, restoring the culture, restoring the religion and all of it. Because of course they are adopting models from outsiders. So children and teenagers just copying models from outsiders. They don't want to speak English or Creole is because their parents don't even speak it. So if the parents don't speak to them in English or Creole, they will not speak it, right? So that is something very important what you just mentioned. Okay, Pastor Edgardo, Jairo, do you all have comments on what we said?
We take clear note of these three proposals that you already identify as the solution, you know? And we noticing that the three of them is around precisely the autonomy of the people, because this is what you identify. The three of them are rules from the community side. In this complex system, social system, you have different actors, and many have their responsibility. The police have a responsibility. The government, local government have a responsibility. National one have one. Immigration have one, and so forth. The parents have, the leaders, social leader have. And we like this because, well, we can start here by concentrating on what led to our reach. So then we are out of our control to get the police or the different force to act and do their part. And we believe, as you explain it, we have to start, you call that the word slip family, but strengthen internally from the basis and take initiative in setting up what we need. A census not necessarily have to we have to wait every 10 or 15 years for the Dani to doing
Correct.
it and doing it bad. Doing it bad because for more than 30, 40 years in San Andres and Providence, especially at the
75,000 people and it can't grow. Exactly.
exactly done bad. I know in the
And
last one
according to
that
them,
they
it goes down instead of going up.
the last one that they made in 2018, it was terrible bad, not only for the Raizal long, but for every single soul in the country, especially the other ethnic group, in such a way that it caused that many organizations had to end up by the Inter-American Court of Justice to sue that census, to make a complaint against that census. So closing here, we have to take, and we can do it. We can manage it ourselves. We can count ourselves, not only count ourselves, but count ourselves with quality variables to know who we are, how much we are, what we have, what we don't have, what problem we have, where we are, and so forth. I welcome that and I like that. Thank you.
Very good. Let's go to
Okay,
the
I had
following.
a question, a quick question,
Go ahead.
in regards to the census, Dr. Castell.
Yes, sir.
Once we collect this data, what is the most important first step you think we should take as a unified community to ensure that the findings lead to real change rather than, just another report that we have?
Policies internationally, policies are made by the collective of people, of the collection of people. So when the community says, this is our data, this is what we have, then they have to accept it. The local authorities or the national authorities, or whatever we want to call them, again, we're not blaming anyone on this talk. They are not accepting the real data for a purpose. We're not going to say which is the purpose, but you all know which is the purpose. So the overpopulation was something planned, and that is not something that we are not, we can't mention. It was planned to overpopulate our island, right? So they really don't want to say how many people really exist on the island. And every year it goes down. But if we have statisticians, we have real professional people taking action, we have lawyers, we have a lot of professionals that can make a real census and involve all the people and say, this is what we have, then they have to accept it. This is the population. Make your budget according to the population. But if you're sending budget to the island for 75,000 people, you have more than 100,000, well, then everything will be locked in, right? Okay, let's go to the following slide because time is running. Let's go to the following slide and then we comment on this as well. I'm having a feedback, Hiram. Raizal leadership and shared responsibility. Okay, here we have cultural and community leaders as guardians of cohesion, families, elders, and youth as active participants, institutions as partners, not directors, shared accountability for prevention and care, and leadership rooted in identity, as what Dr. Raizal was saying, and dignity. This slide speaks directly to who carries the responsibility for protection. So the idea of this is that cultural and community leaders play a central role as guardians of cohesion. Leadership here is not only administrative or political. It is moral, cultural, and relational. Leaders help maintain balance, transmit values, and hold the community together during moments of stress. In every single church, no matter how you call them, Seventh-day Adventist, Baptist, Christian Mission, Catholic, however you call them, you have what? You have elders, right? And the elders are placed in the church for a reason, to help your group of brothers and sisters together. After the pastor, you have the first elder, second elder, and you have different elders in the church. In our community, we need elders. So prevention does not happen only in offices or institutions. It happens in homes, in churches, in schools, in daily interactions. Elders carry wisdom and memory. Parents shape behavior and emotional regulation. Youth are not only at risk, they're also agents of change, and they're included and supported. So the whole community, right? Institutions are necessary, yes, but they must act as partners, not as directors. When solutions are imposed from outside or from above, trust weakens. When institutions listen and collaborate with local leadership, responses become more effective and legitimate. So share accountability means that no single group carries the burden alone. Safety and care are collective responsibility. And we must have this clear. When responsibility is shared, pressure is reduced and coordinate improves. You might be saying, sitting there and listening to us today, how can I participate? Of course you can participate. No matter if you are a child, a teenager, an adult, an elder, no matter if you are a professional or you're not a professional, no matter what, you have a specific role in all of this. Leadership rooted in identity and dignity is what gives solutions strength and continuity. So when people feel respected and seen, they are more willing to participate. They protect one another and sustain long-term change. So the long-term change can happen with our census from our own people. We count ourselves. We say, this is what we have. This is the data. We create a policy and we allow them to say, this is the real data we have. Budget for this real data from the Raizal authority, which is important. Yeah. And then after that, you bring spaces to speak and put the community to speak, to talk. The people are afraid, and the silence is what is bringing more and more violence. And finally, we have the last slide, which is from pressure to protection, a collective path forward. And I want us to have this in mind. Violence reflects social pressure, not who we are as a people. Overpopulation requires data, coordination, and courage. You need to have the real data. Community leadership is central to prevention. Dialogue, vigilance, and care reduce harm. Protecting the island means protecting its people. This is finally the slides that brings everything together. Violence does not define the islands, and it does not define our people. What we are witnessing is not a loss of identity or values, really. It is the result of pressure that has exceeded the island's capacity to absorb it, right? Overpopulation is what is affecting every single thing, affecting our identity, affecting our children, affecting our roots, affecting every single thing. Don't think on violence as the gun shooting, the killing of a person, or just the robbery. That is part of the violence. That is part of it. Overpopulation sits at the center of this pressure. Addressing it requires data, as I said before, coordination, and courage. So data, because we cannot protect what we do not accurately understand. So coordination, because no single group can solve this alone. And courage, because speaking honestly about population pressure is not easy, but is necessary. So community leadership is central to prevention. Raizal leaders out there, all of you, all of us, families, elders, churches, and youth already carrying much of the responsibility for social balance. Strengthening that leadership does not mean replacing institutions, and we have to have this in mind. We're not going to replace institutions. It means ensuring that solutions grow from within the community and respect its dignity. And we have the dialogue and vigilance, as we mentioned before. Dialogue and vigilance and care are not soft responses. Research shows that they're among the most effective ways to reduce violence in saturated environments. When you put people to speak, and when you are taking care of one another and invigilating one another. Listening early, caring collectively, and acting before harm escalates saves lives and preserves relationships. So finally, protecting the island means protecting its people, right? Safety is not only about territory or about infrastructure or about policies, about human beings, families, children, and future generations. When we protect our people, well, of course, the island is protected. I want to now invite you all to comment on what we just said.
Okay.
We are not hearing you, brother. Not hearing you.
uh,
We can hear you now.
myself. Yeah, one of them, you know, anyone hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I say, I repeat, I thank Brother Castell for this very, very, very punctual and effective, his effective dissertation. What we have to understand, Raizal, this were perfectly designed long time ago, and it's perfectly executed. But we can't sit down and decide that it will continue. Listening to final remarks lead me and lead us to understand that we have a job to do and we have to do it and start doing it. And we have to do it and the thing that I said last time, the last part of the segment, that we will repeat the institution. But I think that the institutions, they have to be replaced by our intervention. Why? Would who have the last and, and our demands and our to to carry out the different changes that we have to carry out in whatever manner? I don't think so. So we have to set up the system that as Raizal, we determine what our course will be, because the changes will be and they need to come from us. As what the acronyms FUBO mean. From us, by us. Because then we might do all the things that you line out and you outline here today. And it's fine. But how the change or how the central government, they, I mean, they have the final say.
Okay, he went out. Um, Pastor Eduardo, go ahead.
Okay. We really want to thank Dr. Castell for this presentation and conversation. I would just, as a summary, as a conclusion, I would say that as he mentioned, that even as violence cast a shadow over our youth or people in San Andres and Providence, it does not define who we are or who we can become. I think that when our community chooses to unite families and churches and leaders and neighbors, we can begin to break the cycle that is passed from one generation to the next, as he was sharing. And so by listening to one another, through honest community conversations, dialogue, by caring for each other, as he was recommending, through neighborhood vigilance, and by understanding our reality, through a community based census, something that we need to come together and do as a community. And when we take practical steps that turn fear into safety and trauma into healing and despair into opportunity. So San Andres and Providence, we walk away with hope that we will rise, but when we rise together, choosing peace, investing in our youth, and believing that every young life is worth fighting for. So, given our deep desire in our community to break this cycle and rise together, he gave us at least three good recommendations, practical steps that we can all begin taking as families, as churches, as schools, and local leaders to help rebuild trust, heal trauma, and create safer pathways for our youth. So God bless you, Dr. Castell, and I hope we can continue this conversation um, on this critical topic of violence on our island.
Amen, Pastor. Dr. Ralph, would you like to participate?
No, I thought that was a farewell by Pastor Edgardo. But anyway, thank you, Dr. Castell. And maybe one last point I think we need to bear in mind. We are in election mode on the island, and it's a lot of public announcements and propaganda. And um, if we could make the people aware that who they elect should be a role model for our youth and for the community. Like the governor who is there now, I don't think is a role model. And whoever they elect has that responsibility. And if they can't be a role model, they should not vote for them. Uh, I know it's difficult to reach the people. I wish there was a psychological diagnosis of our community of how to approach them and embed in them the need to really analyze and make right choices. Thank you again.
Thank you to Siegfried. It was very good, and I believe in all these last years we had get paralyzed somehow because we didn't accustom to this series of violence that we present from the last maybe 20 years, and it is increasing day by day, year by year. But we have to come out of that, as you say, of that silence. We have to speak out, we have to talk amongst us, we have to react, and we have to act. And we have to take the leadership and not keep back expecting that the other actors that are not doing their role, we think that it's only them alone have part in this. And we will do it. Thank you.
So thank you all then for listening.
On the next program of this soon, we agree on that. This take more than one program. This will stay on our social media. You can access this back on YouTube, on Facebook, and others. Okay, and we'll get you. We'll tell you in time what continue, but we went profound into this because we want to step from the diagnosis to the actions. And we want to accompany us in that process. We transmit here from San Andres Island, the Paso Gardo there in Texas, El Paso, United States. Siegfried is in Cayman Island. Dr. Ralph is actually accompanying us in the Raizal territory. Brother Enrique O'Neill having technical problem. He's here in San Andres with us. We give thanks, we express our gratitude for this to come, the streaming program become possible. We have been working on it for years, especially the diaspora that help us financially, the Christian University to host us, and other organizations. We really thankful for it. We signing off with a local video of that gratitude. Wait a while. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Until the next program. Try and get this up.